start. Kalimerisas. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. And welcome to this, what will be a little larger, but is a small, eclectic, and very intimate example of what ATINER has always had as its ideal. Sometimes our conferences are a little bigger than this, but it's this 30 to 50 size that we aim at. And the idea, we like to think, comes from classical Greece. But welcome to the heart of historic Athens on a day that an hour, I guess if you actually look at the mountains in the very back of the window there, you can see just a little bit of snow. We might manage you a little more morning snow the morning or two after the conference. But here in the heart of historic Athens, for about 20 years, ATINER has tried to emulate what we feel is the scholarly small-sized discussion of the ancient world. Pericles, in a propaganda moment, one of the funeral orations at the beginning of the Peloponnesian War, trying to convince his own people that it was worth staying in the walls and preserving the culture and not running out to their deaths or fleeing into the hills, listing the reasons why they needed to stay, emphasized that our city is open to the world. We never expel a foreigner from learning or seeing. Not only expel a foreigner, but fail to welcome them. And that became a part of the ATINER mission, which something that people were batting around in the middle 90s, but it really kind of flowered in the year 2000, 2001. ATINER aims to create an organization like Plato's Academy or Aristotle's Lyceum. These are the words of the president who couldn't be here today. He can be a little bolder than I am. I think I'm a little bit more frightened of hubris than President Optimus. But a little bit like Plato's Academy, no pressure on all of you, but you must emulate that now, or Aristotle's Lyceum, where academics and researchers from all over the world with a pedagogy similar to ancient Athens can gather in a symposium type of small meetings to exchange ideas on their research, discuss future developments in their disciplines, something we hope will organically grow out of the presentations into the discussions in the free time today. In this conference that you are attending, we have participants from 13 different countries from all continents of the world: Chile, Egypt, Finland, Israel, Poland, Romania, Russia, Serbia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, Turkey, and, when necessary, the United States. The logistics of the symposium we would like to imagine, so you will all close one eye and pretend that this is true, are based on the proceedings edited by Plato of the original small-scale discussion of this type, which had one 90-minute session, spoiled by an eruption from the outside, and 7 speakers. We will not do that to you. We have 3 speakers intended each 90-minute session. But we've tried to learn a few things from the original conference presentation setting. First of all, if you notice this little logistical diagram of Plato's symposium with Socrates, the symposium was hosted by speaker number 5. And he's the only person that breaks the tendency for every single speaker to speak longer than the previous one. If you look down the times, you also have the names of, we'll call them the papers. The last 2, Socrates himself and a presentation by Diotima of Mantinea, who Socrates is supposed to have studied under in the town of Megara when he was young. Socrates actually read her paper for her. She was very, very old if she was a historical character at the time of this presentation, and she was supposed to be the keynote or sort of anchor speaker, but was not able to be there. The entire session, though, was interrupted, this is what we put at the bottom, by the violent invasion of young and intoxicated Athenian fashionistas and students led by a man named Alcibiades, who called himself a student of Socrates. There's some doubt about that. The historic practice is still followed by Greek university scholars or students today when they want to demonstrate political demands. On insistence of his entourage, Alcibiades spoke, and you'll notice he spoke for over half an hour. He was the uninvited, and he was not necessarily even a legitimate student of Socrates, but you'll notice the name dropping and the attempt to try and sort of create social media fame down there at the bottom. We try to avoid that a little bit. Whether he was under the influence of alcohol or drugs or just his enormous ego, Alcibiades was the person who ruined the symposium in a way we will try not to do. So we have been known to put extra slots into sessions for the latecomers, but we never do it for the uninvited. And we'll try to make sure that each of you have your full time and there is no Alcibiades interruption for you. If you want to speak for 36 minutes, we show you the walking route from the site of the convention this morning down to the historic site of the original symposium at Agathon Street, and you can go down there and speak for 36 minutes. Here, you have 20. Some facts about the organization. Today, we have 2,500 and change members from 117 countries, which are now organized in 37 units in 6 academic divisions. About 6,000 academics from 150 countries are on the lists now, peer reviewing different kinds of papers and journals. So I think one thing we have done well is find a wide variety of volunteers to help with the quality of the published material that we work with. And we would love it if you haven't done that, if you'd be willing to help with that. Every year, about 2,000 researchers present their papers in one of these little conferences. And in total, more than 20,000 researchers have come to Athens and presented papers at one or more conferences since 1995, really since 2000. Our basic activities include the little conferences, the eclectic, intimate kinds of things that we try to design. We also assist in hosting courses accredited by other schools. Quite a few over the years. A few recent ones include one from the University of Maryland, one from Georgia, Sam Houston in Texas, the University of Ottawa, Nanyang University, Singapore. We facilitate or help autonomous summer courses from other schools where we can. We also host research for PhD students. We actually have some studentships. I'll show you that in a moment. And we have some access channels to external funding based on members' initiative. We don't actually provide funding ourselves. We also host visiting researchers, fellows, etc., that want to use the different academic and research facilities that Athens provides, the national libraries, the archaeological sites, the special collections, and the interesting eclectic mix of scholars that have settled in Athens and make good resources for people doing research. In the last year or two, we've hosted a study tour program on education in Greece with Georgia State, as an example, and one on sustainability and infrastructure, working with the University of Maryland. We're experimenting, this actually affects me personally, we're experimenting with the idea of hosting courses that a collection of different schools could send contingents of students to if they find the content worth giving credit for. So we're looking at hosting the startup project, which we listed. You'll see it actually listed under courses on the ATINER website. But the trial listing is for 2020, but the real idea would be to offer in the summer of 21 or 22, is to do a course with our own resources here on studies in ancient or classical Athens, and with tracks in politics, urban culture, I'm an urban historian, art, biography, and military history. If you're interested in that, or you think that your school might be, please contact us or please contact me to get an idea of how we could build in a group of your students and work in the content that would be the sort of thing that you would be interested in offering credit for. The Anglo-Hellenic PhD studentships have to do very specifically with business management and Stirling University in the United Kingdom. This is another opportunity that Athens is connected with, in part because Stirling is one of the schools President Gregory Papanikos has taught at in the past. And I'll let you take a look at this. This is actually a combination of study at Stirling in the UK and in Athens in a mixture of business management and then some history and cultural studies. We publish, first of all, abstract books for all of the presentations that happen in the different conferences. These abstract books, in the simplest form of publication, just the abstract that you sent in or that you revise, these are posted 4 days after the conference. Not before the conference, but 4 days after, because no one gets a posting if they haven't actually presented a paper. Something that we learned the hard way, but it also is important to keep the integrity of what we're doing. There's a conference presentation series, which is an actual online publication of a paper, if you would like that to be seen there. Papers that have been accepted by the conference as worth presenting can be placed online as a publication, and of course they're searchable and people can find them, but don't have to go through the more complex peer review process. The online paper is based on submission and a peer review process. We have published a few books over the years, and you can see a few of them on the table that Olga has set up in the back between sessions. But most importantly these days, and the biggest hit on the reason we need so many people to volunteer for our peer review process, is that ATINER now hosts or is partners in publishing 15 e-journals on a variety of different topics. I work on both the Athens Journal of History and the Athens Journal of Mediterranean Studies, but there are 13 others. Submissions are very welcome. In 2019, our acceptance rate was below 25%, but keeping the quality there does require a lot of volunteers in the peer review process, and we're actively, aggressively working to review and accept the highest quality, so quality developed papers are welcome and the goal. The blind peer review process not only involves volunteers, but we also have some anonymized places online where we post the papers anonymously and invite volunteer reviews on a particular topic. So you need to know that ahead of time. But ATINER asks no fee for submission, no processing, editing, publication fee, no access fee paid by authors, and we do not take money from people to read your published paper in one of the journals. The journals are published in PDF for free, and you can find them online quite easily. This is not one of the arms of ATINER designed to make a profit. This is designed to take the work bringing people to these small conferences and create conversations and quality articles that simply become a part of the open conversation in the academic world. So our challenge is to maintain the peer review integrity process and not try to take money for it. We also do not take any intellectual property rights except for the one-time privilege of publishing the paper in the journal. You keep all copyright except for that single publication, so you can take the article and publish it somewhere else. Not only do we not charge for it, but we consider it yours all the way through. We're trying to follow what we think is the example of classical Greece. Ways to get involved, if you'd like to become involved, and we'd love it if you would wish to be involved, of course, become a member. You can talk to Olga or Kostas or Konstantinos about that, not a fixed cost. There is a small annual fee. We'd love it if you wanted to help us organizing either a conference or a symposium, or more manageably, in many cases, a stream or a panel in one of the conferences. You can find all of the conferences prospectively for this year, already spilled across a series of schedule pages online. Talk to us if you'd like to organize a summer or visiting course, or review or submit papers for publication, or suggest something, we love this, unique and different, researcher pedagogy, but part of the proposal, and always have to say this too, will be how you have the resources, money, and time to implement it. We help, but how you have the money and resources to implement that. A reminder for the presentations and the chairs. Most of the instructions you got in your online letter, there's always one or two things that get left out that year after year I have to add. But we do have a strict 20 minutes. This is the small end of our conference size, which means you have 20 and not 15. When we get to the top end of our, the 55 to 60 number, it's a 15-minute limit. But we knew where we were, so we did tell you you'll have 20 and you will have 20. But chairs will have a 3-minute and a 1-minute card to hold up. And you need to notice when those go up. A part of intelligent presentation and speaking is that 2.5-minute exit strategy where your brilliant point still comes in at the end, but you finish in time for the other people to speak and for people to have questions. And we believe, again, hubris, that we're following Socrates, who said in the Protagoras that you should elect a judge or a foreperson or a chairperson to keep the length of each one's speech short. There you actually have it in the Greek. For technical assistance, you can contact one of the administrative representatives, any one of the 3 that you met coming in this morning. Questions in the sessions are always at the end. And where possible, this is one thing that did not make it into doesn't contradict anything, but the one thing I always like to remind people of, especially in an arts and humanities conference, When possible, I'd like to ask the chair to elicit a question for each of the three presenters. There's never more than three presenters in one of our sessions. Before the question-answer session fixates itself onto the last person who spoke or the person who had the most controversial presentation, we'll try and get a question and answer in for each person. And then you can let the question and answer sort of roll freely, which means there is one slight modification that you might want to bear in mind. Chairs are not here to criticize other people's papers, and in general should elicit questions from the listeners. But if there isn't a question for one of the presentations, it's a good idea to have in the back of your mind something that you can ask to make sure that every one of you, unless you actually ask, you can always tell your chair that you would prefer not to answer questions at the end, and we'll respect that. But otherwise, we assume that all of you have worked very hard, that you are very engaged and interested in what you'd like to present, and it would be worthwhile hearing what a question or two would be. Any additional pedagogical events that you see over emails or other kinds of things that do not actually show up on your social program page, do not trust. There are occasional sort of sets of conferences in Athens, and sometimes the list of participants get around and you'll get emailed things that aren't actually a part of ATINER's program. Take part in them at your own risk, but all of ours are actually on that red social program page that you got. There are a few things that we have built in. A Greek night tonight, which will be in a very interesting location at the edge of the Acropolis. Nice location for dinner tomorrow night. There is an urban walk tomorrow morning, an urban sociologist. There's also an optional tour to Delphi, which if you want to see snow in Greece, you have a much better chance of seeing it there. Not only the old Oracle site up in the mountain, which in the weather we're having right now has some snow, but there's a very strange beautiful little town called Orakova that you have to travel through just before you get to Delphi, that has decided in recent years that in the wintertime it wants to become a Bavarian ski village. I'm still processing that driving through it myself. It's very strange watching what they're doing to the town. But if you take that tour, you'll get a chance to see it. ATINER is about thoughtful conversation. Remember, with these small but learned conversations, you follow in the footsteps of researchers, embedded in the rich heritage of Greek history. We're just going to keep congratulating ourselves for that all the time. Enjoy the conference, and we will try to make sure you all have your time to speak, and you have plenty of chances to take those conversations into the refreshment sessions between. Our first session, I believe, will start in about 6-7 minutes, and we have, I think, is Professor Loganov here? Not yet. So we have the first two speakers to begin. But if you need to do anything or go and get anything for just a couple of minutes, we'll start in about 5 minutes. Thank you all.